So when you first get your calling, at least when I was at my time, they gave you just a welcome letter from the president. And what I remember seeing was a lot of canoes, a lot of rivers, jungle. And so in my mind, I'm freaking out. I Google, Manaus, Brazil, and you see just everything's green except for this one tiny little spot of dirt is what it looks like, and that's your mission. The mission is about 4 states, but when I first arrived there, you're kind of landing, and you see just the same thing, rivers everywhere, and then to the left of you, to the right of you, north, south, whatever, it's all green, and you just see this runway coming in. So, and then once I step out of the plane, it's not like here where you have that transition kind of port thing where you walk off when you board on and off. You walk right out onto the airport, what do you call it? I guess the highway or landing area. So you see all the airplanes. As soon as that door's open, you hit that door, it's a wall of humidity. And that was, I think, one of the coolest, kind of scariest moment, because I was a little nervous about how hot it was going to be, and it was hot. It was really hot. And, it's a good thing, bad thing, however you take it. I actually kind of like the hot because I'm from California originally. So you get off there, you go directly to the mission office, and you get an interview with the president, and then get to kind of feel around. You see how everything's run. So that was my initial experience driving from the airport. A little poor, somewhat developed, surprisingly more developed than I anticipated initially, just because it being the jungle, everyone thinks there's nothing else but jungle out there. And so that was really nice to see that it was civilized to some point. But that was one of the most impressive moments, I think, in my mission, going to the mission home office, I guess. You get to meet the president for the first time. You get a picture initially, but my mission president initially was President Pahela. He was there for a little bit. He was a 70 before he came, stake president and a bishop, whatnot. And man, he had the gift of discernment. It was, I remember how shocked I was initially, because one of the elders came out of the room after he was interviewed just with his face all stunned, because he, word for word, almost kind of explained his patriarchal blessing. I don't know if that's too deep to share, but I remember I was like impressed. I was like, oh my gosh, this is an intense mission. And I think any authority in the church, any general authority, stake president, anyone that has keys, when they just look at you right in the eyes, you could feel Christ's love. At the same time, you could feel the power that they have from the priesthood, and you know why you're here. And just really excited. We got to eat dinner with them, have a cool little home in some building, so that was fun. And then we got to meet our first companion, and that was really fun to see all the missionaries trying to joke, oh, you're going to be my companion, no, you're going to be, trying to joke with you, the Americans and the Brazilians. It was kind of hard to understand both, because you're still learning Portuguese, so you hear some English and it throws you off a little bit. But the first night was kind of rough. Luckily, my companion was nice enough to buy a mosquito net for me. So we sleep in mosquito nets the first night. The water actually, there's this big box on top of the roof of the houses, and when we got home, the water actually was gone. There was no more water left, and so there's a little bit, but the shower wasn't working, so we had to take bucket showers the first night. I remember that was pretty fun. But no air conditioning, don't expect that. There was one house I was in that had it for a second because some elder bought it, but it's just going to be hot the whole time. And usually what you do is you soak yourself with a bucket of water, or drench yourself before you go to bed, lay in bed, let the fan dry you. The next morning you're completely dry. And so that was kind of my initial experience getting there. Going on my mission was really hard for me because my parents were actually getting divorced right before I went, and there's so many stories in my mission that happened that changed my life, allowed me to be the person I am today. And don't get me wrong, we're not perfect. I'm trying to provide for my family. I'm married now. I have 2 beautiful boys and a wonderful wife, and but I could say with all my heart that I was supposed to go on my mission and was able to touch a lot of people's lives through following the Lord and prepare myself before to be worthy enough to go. And I think that's the key thing. In order to have some of these experiences, and you will, preparation is going to be something that you do before you go on your mission. Not that if you don't prepare completely, and I don't think anyone could completely be prepared for anything, but you can do your part. Study now, know what you're going to be preaching, have a testimony. You're not there to gain your testimony when you go on your mission. Before my mission, I was lucky enough to be tracting with 2 elders for about 3 months. Almost every day I'd go out with them, and we had baptism. I'm from LA, and we had a lot of things going, and it was just amazing to have that preparation. And through all that adversity, the Lord was watching out for me, and I didn't even know it. And I think if we have that desire in our hearts, we'll be able to touch many people's lives, and use your strengths and follow the Spirit. I was able to this just a couple little cool stories I had in my first area. This one elder, me and my companion met this young man, and he had a really strong desire. He was going to get baptized in another church or ours, and he felt and knew was right, and got baptized September 11th, actually, which just barely happened. So I always remember his baptismal date. And he actually went on a mission while I was on my mission. And the funny part was, when he was on his mission, his zone leader, I knew him from the MTC. He's like, "Where are you from?" And I was, "Hey, do you know an Elder Lang?" He's like, "Yep, he baptized me." So that was a pretty cool story. But recently, him and his wife just actually last week just mentioned to me that they're going to have a baby finally. And the other thing he told me is, just grateful for me willing to go out there and learn a new language and do all these things. And he told me, Elder, the work doesn't stop with you. I was able to go on my mission, and now someone I baptized is on his mission now. And you see those fruits are you just saw the beginning of what the Lord has prepared for everybody. And it's not about me. I didn't do any of these things. I worked at it. Don't get me wrong. It's hard work, but you only find and experience these things if you're following the Spirit. The church started going to Brazil. I forget exactly the years, but Elder Faust served his mission in southern Brazil, and he was one of the pioneers, I guess, the first missionaries there to get the work done. I forget how many missions there are, about maybe 28, probably more than that now. There are how many temples? There's São Paulo, Campinas. There's Rio Grande do Sul, I think, has one. Manaus has one now. Recife. Probably 6 to 8 temples, give or take. My mission just got a temple last year. That was really cool. So the church has been there for a while, at least maybe 30, 40 years, give or take, my best estimates. Very strong. The people are really accepting of the church. I think just because of all the civil wars that they've had, just with all the coups that the people had with the different governments, and predominantly Catholic country. And so there's that Christian background, so people really identify, and they want to get those answers to the soul. Why am I here? Where I'm going? And I think that's a big thing, and generally anywhere you go where people want to know their purpose. And so I think serving as a missionary, being able to help bring that to people and living what you believe, I think makes a big difference and resonates for the people there. But it's definitely always growing. There's always baptisms in Brazil. I remember when I was there, They were baptizing a lot of people just in general in all missions. So the work has, I think it's getting there. It's still progressing. A lot of retention has to be done, I think, but it's a really good work down there. Downtown Manaus is really fun to go to. Besides your artifacts, there's this huge, I guess, theater they have. I forget what they call it, but it's in downtown. It's kind of one of the symbols of downtown. It was made a long time ago by some foreign architects. That's a great place to go and just do a little tour of that. I definitely recommend going there. It's one of the things you can do. There's a zoo you can go to. I went there and it was amazing. You get to see, I mean, up close and personal, some jaguars, these huge eagles. I got to pet one, which was kind of fun. And what else? You get to see fish. I mean, there's all sorts of different animals you get to see in that zoo. I actually saved everything for the end. I didn't really do too much sightseeing until the end of my mission. So the person I trained got to see everything at the beginning of his mission while I was going out. But you can go downtown several times and see a few things, but the main attractions were that. You go to the temple and check out the temple now. I wish there was a temple and I was there. That's probably one of the cool things you guys will get to do. Ponta Negra is actually where it's at. It's a really cool place to go. Restaurants and food down there, if you can, go to some of those. And also, if things haven't changed, which they probably have, McDonald's is actually pretty good down there. If you guys want to go down there, it's kind of an attraction. When I was there was only 2, and everything tastes a lot more organic, if you will. But that's actually kind of a fun thing to go to. Right now you might be laughing at me, but since you're not, when you're in Brazil, you'll appreciate some American food, at least the taste of it. But I went there once or twice just to celebrate my birthday, or someone invited us to go. So that was pretty fun. But other than that, there's a ton of things to do after your mission, or if your parents pick you up. There's this hotel in the jungle, Ariau Towers. It's supposedly amazing. There's another area you might be able to go to if you're sent there. It's called Parintins. It's where they have this huge festival called Carnaboy. It's like Carnival, but it's with 2 different bulls that kind of attack each other, the red and the blue. And in that city, they actually paint half the town blue, half the town red. And it's just a huge festival. And so if you're there, you'll get to actually, they take the missionaries out when that happens. So never mind. But after your mission, you might be able to go there. But you'll see a lot of that stuff in Manaus when you're there. It's kind of like if you've ever been to New York City or somewhere it's really condensed, alleyways everywhere. So imagine kind of the structure of New York City with a ton of like condensed homes, apartments everywhere, little tiny places like that, but at the same time, not structured. And so these alleyways are like, they start like this and they'll end up like this, so you might not be able to go all the way through. A lot of cobblestone off and on, because Manaus was actually initially a rubber plantation area, and that's how it started, is where they would go through the Amazon and get a lot of rubber from the rubber trees, and it became that's kind of the booming thing it started as. And I think the French were there. I forget exactly who colonized it, but you'll see the old buildings in Manaus. But typically you have houses on stilts from the river, and so they'll be like maybe 6 feet above the ground, 12 feet, wood, and at the top this kind of a tin type of roof. So you hear the rain just bouncing off that. It rains so much in Manaus, and you can see just the evaporation immediately. It kind of reminds me of East Coast weather. Rain stops, rain stops, rain stops, and just humid. The skies, the clouds are beautiful though. But most of the housing, there's dirt floor. If you can afford it, you put some sort of cement down on the ground. You can see the wires exposed everywhere. Some people steal some of the power from the neighbors or whatever, and they do a lot of things like that. But off and on, very, very hard conditions. There was I remember one area there was like maybe like 5 to 15 homes, and one toilet, 4 different like bridges leading to a bathroom, and everybody would share that bathroom. Community it was kind of bizarre, and so that was gross, but I didn't want to go there. So that's pretty much kind of the housing in general. Cement and tile everywhere. You don't really get in your own home. You get your 2 beds, you get 2 desks, and sometimes, if you're lucky enough, you'll get a washer or a washer dryer, I guess. Oh, not a dryer, just something to wash your clothes in. All it does, it spins your clothes, and you'll hang your clothes on the line. That's pretty much it. And it'd be fun. Get a hammock, because that's fun to put up to hang out and read the Book of Mormon or preach my gospel or something on a P-Day. So that's cool to do. Yeah, piranhas you'll see as like an artifact, kind of like a souvenir. I don't know what they do to them, maybe some type of taxidermy method, and they're kind of like glazed looking, but then they kind of turn them so they're facing kind of like aggressive looking, and their teeth are just right at you in the eyes. So those the piranhas are everywhere. They're called piranha in Brazil, and so you'll see those. There's like a myth that people say that there's this crazy fish where don't pee in the river because this fish will, I guess, is small enough to go up in you and kill you or something like that. I don't know if I believe that. I've heard about it. I've never really Googled it, if you will. But there's a fish that supposedly does that. I mean, just don't pee in the river, obviously. You're a missionary. So there's that. Let's see. There's something called tambaqui. This huge fish. It's like that big, kind of. It's really good and easy to eat. It's one of my favorite ones to eat. And like I mentioned, the pirarucu earlier is probably the size of this deck. I don't know. It can get pretty huge. Be like 12 feet, depending on how small it is. Longer than that, it's like this big. And there's also the infamous anaconda you hear about, right? And so there's all sorts of legends you hear about that. Anacondas eating whole cows. What they do is they wrap around the cow, crush the bones, everything, and just eat the whole cow. And I've seen pictures of people in an anaconda before. And so people have died in anaconda. So as the scriptures say, stay away from the rivers and waters. So there's that. There's also pink dolphins, which is kind of cool. So it's a freshwater, like prehistoric dolphin. And there's a legend about the dolphins where I guess it's kind of cool in a sense where there's a lot of out of wedlock, children. And what the mothers would say, because it's typically the father that would leave, to comfort the child, to not make him feel bad that he didn't have a dad, the legend would be to tell the child, hey, it's called a botu. That's what they called the pink dolphins. Oh, the botus, they turn into men or women at night, and they become men or women, and they go and try to seduce or be with someone or whatever. And so the moms or dads that had their spouse or whatever leave them will tell the kids, actually, your dad's or your mom's a dolphin. And so everyone loves that story because, I mean, it's kind of silly, but at the same time, you could see how a parent's trying to not make their kid feel like their kid was that they were abandoned. And so that's a legend you'll hear people talk about, and they swear that they saw someone transform into one or that their great grandpa saw one someday. And it's fun to hear these stories. So that's a big kind of legend they have there. So I'll start with the common animals you see day to day. So unfortunately, you never get away from pigeons. There's pigeons everywhere. They're funny. They're cool. So you get pigeons everywhere. What's cool is they have, I forget the type of bird. There's these tiny little birds, and they kind of beep, beep, beep at you. Finches, I think. Yeah, I think they're finches. But those are everywhere. They're really cool to see. You get a lot of parrots. You see a lot of parrots. Papagayo was what we call them. There's a ton of parrots everywhere, green ones. And papagayo is actually another term they call kites. It's a slang, and little kids love to. They battle each other with these kites in the air, so you see that everywhere actually, and kites in the electrical wiring for the power on the houses. So you see that everywhere. Macaws actually you get to see quite a bit of. Really cool. The macaws are awesome. I mean, I always took pictures. If all of a sudden sometimes you see 2 pairs flying or 1, but you see a lot of macaws. That's really cool to see. And in person, you get to see, one-on-one. Some people have to train them, and you see them like in downtown Manaus. Go on a P day, for sure. If you go downtown, where they have all the souvenirs and trinkets, you'll see a lot of birds and exotic birds. I saw a toucan in the zoo, but not just common. But I guess some elders have seen them. Toucans are really cool looking. What else? A lot of iguanas, huge ones, small ones, all sorts of sizes. You see them everywhere. Field mice. So those are kind of common to see actually, which is kind of fun. So you get to see those all the time. Bugs, you'll see all sorts of bugs everywhere. I guess they're insects, not animals, but you'll see all types of bugs. Spiders are everywhere, like big ones. Cockroaches are everywhere. Got to make sure you clean the baptismal font if the members don't do it. And there's tons of cockroaches in there if you leave the water in there. They'll get waterlogged, so got to be careful with that. What other birds? And a lot of birds. You see a ton of birds. There's the blue macaw. There's the regular, green, red, blue-ish, yellow, I think. Let's see. Jaguars. There's jaguars in the jungle, but typically if you're in the jungle, you're probably not where you should be. So you try to steer away from danger. I mean, although it's fun, there was this one kind of reserve area where we lived. Here's our house right here, and this is the jungle area right in front of our house. So there was a shortcut the members told us to get to from here to the church. So it was pretty common. There was a lot of people that went there, so we would go there every once in a while. I was always hoping to see something cool, but other than the normal birds I saw, those are normal, so they're still cool, but not as cool. I saw a few condors, a few eagles before, some crazy looking slugs, millipedes, centipedes are just like, I don't know, fat and juicy. Things you'd see like in cartoons. Bats, you'll see a lot of bats sometimes. Armadillos are pretty common. One day I was walking down the street and this armadillo was just kind of walking around, and this guy said food, and he ran towards it and just was hunting. I don't know, just killed the little armadillo. It's really sad, but it's their food. A lot of turtles are there too. Big old turtles about this big, different sizes. Like I said, that's pretty common. Fish are big and common there. Piranhas are also kind of cool. The water in general, like the rivers, pretty dangerous. You don't know. I mean, it's called Rio Negro, the Black River Transit, is pretty murky. You can't see any. If you put your hand in the water, you can't really see below. I've never touched it, but you can't really see. From what they were telling me, you can't really see anything. I've been close enough to the port where you could see the water splashing, but it's dark. It's kind of gross. And you have your alligators there all the time. I mean, they have tiny little rivers going to the main rivers in the areas you're at, and you'll see alligators there as well. That's another common animal you see, actually. So forgot to mention that. But so you just don't go in the water, don't go near it sometimes. Just as you go, other dangers. I mean, you're in a foreign country. You got to be careful with rabies. Other common things you see are dogs actually everywhere. Forgot about that. Dogs and stray cats just everywhere. And so it's really sad to see just how congested it is with so many animals. Makes me glad we have kind of a system up here at the same time to control that. So you got to be careful with rabies for sure. Also, use your, follow the spirit, discernment to see if someone has like a some sort of second reason or latent reason to be meeting with you, because sometimes you never know if there's, you know, something bad amidst you. Because there's some theft you'll bump into. I think in a foreign country, they know you're American. I might not look American to most people. The people thought I was Brazilian half the time. But so I blended in. But if they know that you're a missionary, some people might want to steal from you or something. So just make sure you're in good places, lit places. Bring a flashlight sometimes with you if you know you're in a place that there might not be any city power lights around the area, because there are areas where there's no power at all. But that's one thing you definitely want to be careful with, is where you're at. There's all sorts of food. That's probably the best thing. If you love fish, this is your mission. I love fish. So I was really excited to see that was going to be part of my main diet. I'll buy the fish here. You know, it's all filleted and cut up. Over there, you eat like the whole fish. So you got the scales, you peel off everything. And, you know, that's a big part of the culture. They have like prehistoric fish out there that you eat. One of them is called pirarucu. It's amazing. The bones in there aren't like the little tiny like bones you have in the fish here. Basically, it's like a chicken bone. You just pull it out. That's it. So it's really easy to eat that fish. Everything else you'll get used to. And for some reason, Brazilians love to eat with a spoon in my mission. I don't know why, but the spoon was like the main thing. They'll have forks, they'll have knives, but they'll give you the spoon. And I remember, you know, my companion telling me, you know, you don't understand Portuguese all the way still. I could get around. And he's like, yeah, we're going to this member's house. And he was just concerned that I was going to be picky about the food. And I think that's one thing everyone needs to be aware of, that everyone here doesn't have the best means, but they give you the best they have. And so my first lunch, that's the biggest meal in Brazil, is going to be lunch. Breakfast you eat on your own, lunch provided by the members, and then dinner you either eat yourself or you don't. Usually I'd never ate dinner until I got home around 9 o'clock. We made a little something, that was it. But I guess going on a tangent, my story. So I get there. He was telling me beforehand, hey, these members are really poor. Just, you know, make sure you eat everything, because it's offensive if you don't finish what they give you. And just be mindful that they're poor and they're giving us the best. And he's Brazilian, so it's hard to maybe understand. So what happened was, I see this tiny, like I don't know what kind of fish it was. I think it was a sardine or something. This tiny fish, a bowl of beans, and another small bowl of rice, literally about this size. And so we're sitting there, and my first impression was, man, I am going to lose some weight. If that's all I'm eating is that little fish, that tiny bowl. And that bowl was for me and my companion. And so I was a little worried. But they had something called farofa, or farinha. It's kind of like cornmeal, like the texture. Really big, the morsels. And they add that to the poor people. I mean, everyone eats it, but typically it started with poor people that didn't have the means, and they would add that as a filler. And so that's what you ate with everything. And so your beans and rice, and the beans, they had something called Feijoada, which has a lot of pig feet, pig nose, ears, but typically that's, you know, rare if you have ears. And I mean, I don't know, at least in our mission, you sometimes get it, sometimes you don't. Something called sharky, which is some sort of fat that they put in there. I forget what kind of meat it is. I read on the label and it said horse meat at first, but maybe I was wrong, but that was in there. That's pretty much it. I left, and you know, we were very grateful. You leave a message every time you sit down with the members. They always expect a little something from you, a little spiritual thought, and then you leave. The best part about it was, about 2 weeks later, I can understand a little bit more. The members were like, so how did you like the food, you know, at church? And I said, oh, it was great. You know, I'd love to eat there some other time. It's like, yeah, I noticed you didn't eat very much. I was like, I ate the whole thing. In my mind, I said. And I was like, well, to be honest, I just, you know, I didn't want to eat the whole meal, because they weren't sitting there at the table. I forgot to mention that. It was just for us. And they were I thought they already ate, or I wanted to leave some over for them. But they told me no, we actually had pots and pots full of food right in the kitchen. We just set some out just for you guys right now. I was like, oh my gosh, no way. I was starving that night. And so, yeah, they had all sorts of fish, all sorts of beans and rice, same kind of food, but all I ate was like whatever was left on there. Fruit is a big thing over there. They have all sorts of fruit. They have, I don't know, hundreds of different types of bananas. Bananas actually has different types. It's little tiny small ones, huge ones, plantains, I don't know, tons of bananas. And they're really cheap. Everything's cheap there. Yeah, mangoes are really inexpensive there too. They're like 25 cents in Brazilian currency. It's really cheap, so you get those all the time. It's really nice. Then acai is actually probably the most popular thing there. Right here in the States, it became a big fad after I got home, and it's really good. You could buy you could buy like acai for, I don't know, jamba juice for like $7 for a big one. Get a whole liter of it in Manaus, it's probably 50 cents. And so, I mean, I turned purple. I ate so much of that stuff. It was really good. You mix that with some oatmeal, it's really good and hearty for you. Cupuaçu, that's another really native fruit to Manaus. I can't really explain the taste of it. I've never really tasted anything like it, but you'll love it. It's kind of something you learn to like eventually. At first it was a little awkward, but it's really good. They make a lot of candy, chocolate. Let's see, genipapu is another good fruit. It's kind of reminds you of like the smell of gasoline, but it's something that they'll serve you sometimes, and I actually ended up liking it. It's better. I mean, it's not like gasoline, but it's similar to a weird smell to that. You know, Brazil's known to have, most of Brazil is going to have your churrascarias, which is like your Tucanos or Rodizio's grill. So Rodizio is what they call rodizio, and it's like a buffet of meats. But in Manaus, they don't have very many cattle, anything going like that. It's way too expensive for, you know, importation of that to Manaus. They do have a few, but very expensive to go to. And the pizza there is really interesting. Pizza is probably one of my favorite foods to eat. But the pizza in Brazil, give or take, they have like actually like a dessert pizza, which is pretty good. With just chocolate and whatever you want put on there. But the normal pizza is going to have, instead of like pizza sauce, they barely put any on there. They'll put mustard, ketchup, and mayo. So it's kind of like the hot dog a little bit. So they put that on there. You have your cheese. And they have something called presunto, which is like a type of sausage, mortadella as well. They put that on there as well. So, and pepperoni is really expensive, so it's a treat to get a pepperoni pizza. But that's, yeah, and you'll find some other things. One of the funny things that I thought translation-wise was kind of funny. In Brazil, there's a program you learn in the MTC that teaches you Portuguese. And I always wondered why they called it the X burger. But in Portuguese, the X is actually pronounced cheese. And it kind of sounds like cheese. And so if you're walking down the street and you see like a little vending, like a little restaurant, they'll advertise the X burger. It's a cheeseburger, actually. So, so that's what it is. It took me a while to actually put one and one together. But it's not the X burger, it's the cheeseburger. You eat a lot of turtle sometimes. Just depends on how native the people are from Brazil. If they're like one generation like Indian, then they'll serve you some more exotic foods. So I ate some turtle. That was kind of weird. The grilled turtle was weird. Now turtle soup is not too bad, just because you don't see the actual turtle and have to pull off the shell. The other thing that was really good is actually surprisingly is crocodile or alligator. I forget one of the two. And that's really good. I think it's alligator. It's really good. Tastes like a fish chicken mix. And so I wouldn't mind eating more alligator. Some elders ate monkey, and that was kind of weird the way they described it. I'll let your imagination go on that one. So monkey's kind of weird. Another food they ate, what else was interesting? Bull tail or cow tails. They don't let go. They don't get rid of all the stuff that we get rid of here. So, I mean, your liver, you get intestines, like everything they try to scrape and make food out of. And make sure you're nice to the sisters when they cook it, and eat eat what they give you. That's a big thing. Don't disrespect them. I think that's important. So they have one major one in Manaus specifically. It's probably the best guaraná you'll ever taste. It's called Bare. It's really good. You can't really compare it to anything. It's kind of like, I guess, if you add some vanilla into your guaraná and root beer. I don't know. It's a really good guaraná. You get all sorts of picolé. Picolé is your kind of popsicle. The vendors sell them all over the place. And actually, interestingly enough, avocado is, they use it more as a fruit. They add sugar to it, and that's like you can have an avocado shake, which isn't too bad. The avocado popsicle is actually really good. All the popsicles they make are really good. Coconut, you eat that all the time if you want to. And I guess one of my favorite candies there was something called pasoka. It's like a Reese's peanut butter cup, but just the Reese's, like not the chocolate part, but the peanut butter kind of crunchy thing. That's what it is, basically. Our mission was actually dubbed, back when I was there a few years ago, the most sickly mission in all the states. And so don't be surprised if you get there and you get sick right away. First thing not to do is drink the tap water. Hard thing is you can't avoid it completely because the members cook with the tap water unless they boil it out, which sometimes they don't. Unfortunately, you'll probably end up getting some sort of parasite on your mission. I had 3 different types of tapeworms and 2 amoebas at one point, and I had to go to the hospital because my skin was twitching, and so it was kind of crazy. I had to, wash my hair with a special soap, wash my body with a special soap and lotion, so topical stuff, and on top of that, I was on some medication. And ever since then, I've not been the same. A lot of diarrhea elders have, some sicknesses I can't really tell you about because they're pretty bad. Malaria is pretty prevalent still. This elder, when I got transferred into this house I went to, he had malaria. He got malaria in that home. And actually, recently he went to the dedication of the temple, got a different strain of malaria again. So, and he was only there for a week. So it's really hard to do any of that kind of stuff. Dengue is another thing. You get dengue fever. Basically this kind of larva that's in the, you got to be careful to make sure your box is clean with the on top of the house where the water is, if you could get there. Typically people in sanitation in Manaus come and check the homes just because they want to get rid of those diseases, and they check those boxes, make sure they have a lid, because that's how I got dengue. My first transfer, it was really bad, and I couldn't move. I was walking down the street, all of a sudden I felt like I was getting paralyzed and my back started hurting. Luckily, there was a chair somewhere, and I sat there, and I just kind of turned white and sat there until we had the strength enough to go to the house. And I got a blessing, and miraculously the next day, I was healed. And that was probably one of the first miracles. That was the first miracle I experienced in my mission, and realized that this is a really, really special place. The members there were just, shocked because everyone knew I had it, and they were bringing us dinner and trying to take care of us. But that's probably going to be your worst battle, is going to be sickness, and you want to fight through it. You'll want to work hard, and you don't wimp out if you have a little sniffle or something like that. But for the most part, you'll be sick a little bit. I mean, it depends on each missionary, but I obeyed all the rules with sanitation. And we have these big jugs of water, those 5-gallon bottles of water you can get at the stores. You all get those, so you have to pay for those and get reimbursed. I don't know if that's how it works now, but you have those. You drink out of those all the time. As long as you clean your house, I think you'll be safe for the most part. Where I was, at least, part of my mission, I had my belt And my shoes I have to scuff down just with the sponge, or else mildew would grow on them. And so that was kind of bizarre, but you'll get mildew growing everywhere. And yeah, everything, it grows quick. There's bugs everywhere. Cockroaches probably like this big, just flying too. It's just kind of bizarre, but you get that. But as far as sanitation, the sewage system is kind of bad. So it smells a little funky around Brazil, Manaus. Everything drains into the big river in Manaus, the two rivers, Rio Solimões and Rio Negro, which make the Amazon River. They join up, and that's actually one of the famous spots, and one of the biggest famous spots in Brazil, because even though the one river is black and the other river is brown, they'll meet up, and for a while, for a few miles, they don't mix actually. So it's the Amazon River, but they don't mix at all. It's kind of cool to see. I used to live really close to it, so every day I would see it. But other sanitation, yeah, just water comes and goes, power comes and goes. Make sure to have a functioning fan at all times, if possible, if the power's on. And mosquito net's a lifesaver. Don't ever take it off. I had a missionary companion that decided he was sick of sleeping in there, and one day he just took it off, and the next morning there was some sort of like tarantula spider on his bedpost, and so he was freaking out. It was hilarious. I woke up, I was like, what's going on? So that was that. And you'll get all sorts of bugs and critters in your house. That same house, we had a iguana. Like, for some reason, they didn't complete the top part of the house, so you have the roof and ceiling, and this gap around the whole house, about maybe 6 inches wide around the whole, and long, or high, around the whole house. And so we'd see mice crawling up and down the wood. That iguana, I was studying on my bed, just kind of reading personal studies, some scriptures on P-Day. And then I hear this scream, and my other companion, this iguana about this big, landed on his desk. And so you get all sorts of funny experiences like that all the time. I had a cat randomly come in our house once, a pigeon. So just bizarre, random things that would never happen normally. A bat once. That was fun. It's scary. You don't want to get bit by a bat, so we got rid of it. Yeah, as long as you obey the mission rules, for the most part, you'll be fine. But you'll get sick. That's just part of the mission. Just get used to it, and your faith will be strengthened for it, I think. As long as you pray and have that faith that things will be fine, they will be. And you'll be able to have a lot of opportunities to bless others and see that priesthood power grow. There's about a month that, because we live in the Amazon, it's really, the banks are pretty good for the most part. The church deposits you and gives you an allowance to live off of. But, and I had some, I'd saved some money, some cash just in case. But typically we kind of split the light and water bill, and then the water jug bill for that with you and your companion. It was my turn to do it. I got transferred, and the guy that just left was supposed to do it, but he didn't, and the other companion didn't want to do it. And so I was like, well, we kind of need power and water to drink. And so I didn't have enough water to pay for the water to drink, but to shower, yeah. So I paid it. Didn't have any money coming in, but I figured, hey, the money's coming in next week. I get reimbursed for that anyway, so I'll just pay for it. And the money didn't come. And so you try to obey the rules as much as you can. But it got to a point where I was going to the bathroom and I could tell there was something wrong. I was like getting dehydrated, and like it was a different color than normal. And so, I prayed, and it's like, okay, we ran out of gas to boil our water. There's no more water to drink. I'm going to have to drink from the tap. So I just drank it. And ever since then, my stomach wasn't the same. So that was, I think, how it all started for me. And so you try not to I mean, I don't like to drink out of the tap water here. And so that was a big thing for me to do there, but I kind of had to, or else I don't know what would have happened later, because you work and walk so much. There's no cars, there's no bikes on your mission. It's just walking, and sometimes you get a bus ride if you pay for it. But typically, it's so rural where you're working in your area that there's no bus rides, and you don't want to waste money that way, anyways. You want to talk to the people as you're walking down the streets, and you want to feel the area and get to know people. So turn down any water cups you have if people offer you water, unless it's a water bottle, or if they have a jug of water. Typically you're safe for that. But I forget the scripture reference in the Bible. A lot of people love the Bible down in Brazil because it's Catholic predominantly, and I used to read it to random people that would offer me water. Blessed be those that offer water to the Lord's servants. And so that got me in a lot of houses. A lot of people love that. And people are so happy to see you. But the water is dangerous to drink. They can get long. I mean,
yours?
I never really wanted to see, but they checked at the hospital and they said, "Yep, you've got tapeworms." Because sometimes you don't, you'll see the tails that get chopped off as the food's processing in your a stool sample or something, and they'll check that, and they could tell by that if you have any tapeworms in your body. So it's pretty common. It might have been just me, but I knew there was something wrong because I started getting a few blotches on my skin. And it felt like maybe it was itching, kind of twitching slightly. Like I could see a few things moving. And that's when I got diagnosed with those 3 tapeworms, different tapeworms and 2 different amoebas. And that's pretty bad for you. You could die from that. So I was actually in an area called Tefé, which is a 2-day boat ride to get there. They don't do boat rides anymore, but we would fly in from an airplane. It would take 2 or 3 hours to fly us there, and then you go to the border, Brazil, Peru, and Colombia, actually. So I got to see that in some of the flights I went. But since I was in the middle of nowhere, they rushed me to the hospital Manaus, and so I was in there, and don't want to get too many details because it's not the nicest thing to hear, but they check you. They do different little tests on you to see what you have. Typically, you'll start losing a lot of weight for no reason. You're always hungry. Sometimes the tapeworms will eat the food that you're eating right there and then. So there's people that just actually starve to death. They could be huge as can be because the tapeworms are just so big, but they're barely getting any nutrition because the tapeworms are eating everything. And it depends on the type of tapeworm, but it's very common to see little kids have big guts, and that means they have some sort of amoeba or tapeworm. So if you see little boys, it's really sad to see. That really broke my heart when I saw little kids. And they're happy. Everyone's happy. They're just kind of used to it. Some people aren't, they're immune to some of the things for the most part. But that was, you'll get a lot of that. When you go to the bathroom, you'll know sometimes if you have a worm or not. It's kind of bad. But there's nothing really you can do for it. Typically in Zoom meetings, they'll give you this medicine that gets rid of any tapeworms in your body. And that usually does a trick. But they know who we are in the hospital. Just leave it at that. They know that you're a missionary, and we kind of have an account with them from what I remember. So going on with following the Spirit, I was training at the end of my mission. And training is just an awesome experience, but I hope you guys get to do that sometime. Me and this elder were trying to track by the Spirit. We prayed, we tried to find different areas, and we both came to the realization that we have to be in this general area on the map. We both kind of prayed, and that was where we wanted to go. We both had the same revelation, and as I was going there, I was like, let's just really try to follow the Spirit. And I said, so Elder, which way should we go? He's like, I think we should go that way. I was like, I feel really strongly about that too. And we just kept doing that. And then eventually I saw this home and I said, wow, we really need to go there. And he said, I feel that really too. And it's probably his first week in the field. And we go there, knock on the door, or you actually clap. You don't knock, you clap. And this young lady answered the door. She's about 17, 18, I don't remember exactly. And she really didn't want anything to do with us. We taught her, and she read the Book of Mormon the next time we came and visited with her. And, she converted. She ended up being a member. Now she's been married in the temple, and she has a family, and married a returned missionary. She lives in southern Brazil now. But I know that if we prepare ourselves and we follow the Spirit, we'll have wonderful experiences, not only in this life, but in the next to come. We'll be able to continue this missionary work, and I know that this church is true. I know that the work of the Lord is still going, and it will keep going, and it's up to us to make that happen. And we always have to realize it's the hand of the Lord in all the things that we do. I just want to bear my testimony. En el nombre de Jesus Cristo, Amen. We had some of the elders told me in the mission home, they were right next to this place. They call it, favelas. You probably heard of them more specifically in Rio. That's kind of the ghetto in Manaus. And they had just a few streets to work with, but they were in this favela where this river was. They call it Igarape. It's like a stream. And people throw their trash and everything down there. There's no plumbing, once again, so everything that, you go to the bathroom, everything goes there. And one day there was a shooting there. There's a lot of shootings in Manaus. And the elders were in the middle of teaching a lesson, and usually when you're about to give the first vision, something bad happens for some reason in my mission. And that started there for them. This is what they told me. And they were basically running away from people shooting at the homes. And since everything's made of either cardboard or like a tiny, like some thin wood, particle board sometimes, those bullets just fly right through. And they were chasing the missionaries, and the missionaries had to jump inside that filthy water and, just tread through that. And man, they said they reeked for about a week. And so safety-wise, just be in the right place. Just make sure the timing, where you're going to be, where you plan, and plan around that. And sometimes it might be good to let a member know if you're going to be somewhere maybe a little more dangerous. In general, it's not the safest place to be because it's not lit half the time, and the power goes out half the time. And so just be careful where you're going. Christmas, it's probably, everyone looks forward to Christmas here. In Brazil, it's just the same. I mean, it's celebrated there, so it's really amazing to see how people are so warm and caring, and just like how it is in the States, you get a lot of people open up to you. The other good thing about Christmas is you get to call home, so you get to talk to mom and dad and see how they're doing and your family. And we've been working hard in this area. It's my second area, and we had a lot of people coming to church with us, a ton of people. And so we were really blessed to be here at that time. It was also a challenging time for me. My third transfer is what it was, just because, as I mentioned before, I didn't have any money and I didn't have anything to drink. And the area was divided. It was kind of, the church was on top of a hill. The zone leaders had that kind of top area, and we were down here. And there was probably only three members in that area, actually. And so we only got to eat 3 times a week with the members, sometimes 4 if a member wanted to do double. But typically it was 3 to 4 times a week. We were always hungry. We always had to make food. And I actually lived off M&Ms that my mom sent me in a package for a little bit, actually, M&Ms and pistachios. And so, because we didn't have any money, and we were glad that sometimes like a random stranger, hey, you guys want something to eat? And so you go for that sometimes. At this time, we had prepared 5 people that were ready to get baptized. And it was an awesome day because in the morning got to talk to mom and dad and my brothers and sisters, just kind of see how they were doing. We ate a great lunch with some of the members. We taught a few discussions or lessons, whatever you want to call them. And we went to go get everything ready for the baptism. And when we got there, the power was out. The water wasn't running. And so, unfortunately, we were worried we were going to have to cancel it. And sometimes the missionaries call it, a white Christmas. We were going to have a white Christmas because we were going to have a few baptisms. And, the people that were getting ready to get baptized were, really bummed out because they really wanted to get baptized on Christmas Day. And luckily what happened is one of the zone leaders was like, let's just call the fire department to see if they'd be willing to come down. And they did. They started, they traveled pretty far to get up to where we were. The power had to turn on as well. And we did a little prayer before, and the Lord came through, and these people were ready to be baptized, and He made it happen. And the power came on, the water didn't come on. And so there's a picture of us helping the firemen get the hoses out. And we opened up, got the water to go, hit it, right? And black water started coming out into the baptismal font. And I was like, there's something wrong with this water? And the firefighters were like, well, it rains a ton out here. So we're volunteer firefighters. So that water's probably been there for some time. It's probably the rust from the inside of the tank. So it's been there for a while. And the guy's like, so you guys are doing a baptism today, huh? Wow. And he wasn't even LDS. He's like, that's awesome. I'm glad we could be a part of that. And he's like, just make sure when you baptize them, have them hold their breath, because you don't want to send them straight to heaven if they drink that water. And so once, we got all ready and dressed and we got in there, and you could smell the rust out of that water. It was black. It was gross. And so it was a mom, her son, and her husband, and the little boy wanted me to baptize him. And unfortunately, we didn't have this size, the right size for him to wear in his jumpsuit, so it was an adult size. Kind of rolled it up a little bit, and as he was walking out, he tripped and just kind of did a cannonball right into the baptismal font. Just font splashed everywhere, and everyone. It was a great time. You could really feel the Spirit. And it seems like in those hard times where you think things won't happen, you think that you have that adversity coming against you, I think that's the time when you really get close to the Lord. So you're going to Brazil Manaus, probably the biggest mission, hardest mission, sweatiest mission you'll go to. So it's a really exciting time in your life. One of the things I'd recommend for you to do is, first off, as in any mission, continue to read the scriptures and preach my gospel like you haven't before. If you do that, you'll be way prepared and be able to teach the gospel. The other thing I'd recommend is actually preparing and maybe starting right now to learn some of the small things in Portuguese. Learn to teach, maybe have a preach my gospel in Portuguese and try to translate that way, and little by little learn a little bit about your mission language beforehand to give you that extra edge when you get out there to just go running out in the field and work hard. Another thing I'd recommend as well is try to get your workouts in before you go out there, because you'll need that strength to keep going physically. It's a really physical mission, so keep your endurance up and maybe prepare physically to go there as well. As far as bringing stuff there, don't pack all your Colgate, don't get all your toothbrushes. A lot of people make mistakes and bring like 3 suitcases. We're only allowed, when I was there, to bring 1. So make sure you get a lot of short sleeve shirts. Probably bring an extra set of garments you could switch out of maybe in the middle of your mission, or have your parents ship those out to you, because there's not a distribution center there. So I would bring some extras to tuck away in your suitcase until you need them, as you need them. Sometimes you can order everything through the mission office, but I brought some and I didn't have to worry about it. I would probably also buy really good shoes, because the shoes in Brazil, if you want to get some good shoes, they're going to be the ones that you buy here anyways. So I would buy some good shoes. I have Echoes. They're awesome shoes. And probably a few pair of dark pants. Bring that with you. Other than that, you're going to be traveling a lot. It takes our mission's about 4 states big. And you'll either go by plane, you'll go by by bus or taxis, and you'll travel for quite some time. And so be prepared to be prepared for that and not bring too many things. I think that's a big thing I would do. If I could go back, I brought an extra sack of, extra soap, toothbrush, and random little items that you don't really need to bring, because you could buy that stuff there. And if your mom's nagging at you, love your mom, because she's always trying to give you more than you need because she loves you. But you don't really need to bring much. Probably bring a photo album to remember your family when you're there. And probably bring a good camera as well. You'll be able to take very many pictures of all the beautiful scenes in Brazil. The sunsets are amazing in Manaus. People are amazing as well. Maybe save a few extra dollars to buy some souvenirs when you're there. I think that's fun to do. I actually bought a suitcase since I only brought one, and I bought one there in Brazil and just brought a few extra things that I wanted to. But make sure to buy a cheap suit. Don't go all out and at Mr. Mac and buy 2 to 3 suits, because you only need one unless you really feel like it. But I actually gave my suit away because it's you only wear it in the MTC. That's the only time you'll ever wear your suit. I think that'll about wrap it up. Be ready to work hard and sweat a lot.
I guess I got to start back in Virginia, because when I got on the plane and everything, I actually ran into one of the elders from my district. It was kind of nice to see him again after 6 weeks. Like, hey, you're back! So we were on the plane together, and I'd been used to riding around on a bike in Richmond, Virginia in November. So I was just short sleeve shirt, that's all I had, short sleeve shirt and a sweater on a bike in November. I was used to the cold by now. So I got on the plane, and it was okay on the plane. Then I got down to São Paulo, one of the bigger cities down in the south, and I got off the plane. It's like, this is already getting hot. And it was like 9 o'clock in the morning, 85 degrees. Like, I'm gonna die. This time I was like 214 pounds. I was a big dude. And then we got on the plane, and as we were flying to Manaus, I could feel it getting hotter and hotter the whole time inside the plane. Like, oh boy. And then I got off the plane in Manaus, and it was just like, the song about the snowman, how he melts? That's literally how I felt. I just started sweating so much that stepping right off the plane, it was like stepping into a hot tub or a sauna at 110 degrees. It was really hot. It was really kind of cool, because when I got there, Elder Stark and we didn't really understand anything that was going on. The assistants were there to meet us, the secretaries, the President Klein. It was kind of fun. The only other American there were a couple other American elders arriving with us, but the only other American there was one of the secretaries. And he'd already been out for more than a year, so he didn't speak English anymore. So I was like, hey, you're American. He started speaking Portuguese to us. So we were all kind of confused, and then we got on the bus to go to the mission home. We got to stop off at the temple. And just they had this tradition of every group who gets there at the same time, they'd take a picture of everybody with the mission president. So we got a picture of 40 missionaries together, the sisters, the elders, everybody, with the mission president. And then we kind of had like 5-10 minutes to walk around the temple, look at it, just kind of that. And then we headed off to the mission office for our assignments. And I got there, and it's just we had the training meeting that they give everybody. And just this is how it is. This is how you're gonna live. And then they started calling the companions and everything. And there were a couple like I could understand a little bit of what he was saying, and I'd met some of the other elders by then. Elder Stark went, and right off the bat he left Manaus. He just spent 6 months out in a little city called Tefe, way out in the backwoods, like 15 hours away from Manaus by boat. Though, and then when I was the last one to get assigned, and it was just President Klein told me, stand up. Now your companion's in this line. You need to figure out who it is. So just walk. I'll let you know when it is. So it's like I was just walking along. I'd look at each elder. Who is this guy? Is it him? And President Klein is, no, not yet, not yet. There he is. My companion was from São Paulo. His name was Elder Hawk. He was actually, at the time, he was one of the secretaries to the president. He was the secretary of logistics. Basically, he just processed all the baptismal records. Because it was winding down the year and they had to get everything sent into Salt Lake. So we just spent our whole day in the mission office, picking up the paper, putting it in the computer, and sending it to Salt Lake. And then just trying to get to know him a little better. But he's a great guy. I love him to death. And then just seeing the difference between Manaus and Virginia, and even Washington. Washington was hugely different from Virginia. The culture was different. We had a lot of Mexicans in where I live. And when I got to Virginia, there's no Mexicans. There's a lot of Spanish speakers, but there's a lot of everything else. And then I got to Manaus, it's just straight Brazilians, and there were the Indians. I mean, they weren't with the kilt and everything, all painted, but there were Indians there. It was like, I don't know where I am. What am I doing here? But yeah, it was a great experience. My first night in the apartment, I just remember we were there because of the transfers. There were 10 elders sleeping in the apartment made for 2. So it's just all crammed in. Everybody was there. We spent 2 days like that, and then everybody just split. Went back to their areas. I got started working with my companion in the mission office and in our area. It was like an hour's walk away from the mission office. Just a little tiny area, just so we had one to work rather than just stay in the mission office the whole day. Other than that, it was just kind of the culture shock that happens to everybody. A lot of this I found out actually just during my time there. I found out that the first president of the Manaus Mission was actually Elder Costa. R.M. Costa was the first president of the mission. He opened it up in 94-ish, about that time. And in that year, they sent the first caravan to the temple. It took them a week and a half to get down there. They spent a week there. It took them a week and a half to get back. So they were traveling for about a month to go to the temple down in São Paulo. Because at the time, there was no other temple close. It was either São Paulo or it was to go up to Mexico City. So they had really long traveling times. It was kind of cool. I met one elder who served under Elder Costa. He'd served his mission. He was from Porto Alegre, if I'm not mistaken, and he just came back. He loved Manaus so much that he just came back. Also, it's literally, as far as I know, one of the biggest missions in the world. It's probably a fifth or a third of the size of the entire country of Brazil, because it's got the entire Amazon basin in there, all the way from Parintins, which is close to the mouth of the Amazon River, way back to Venezuela, Ecuador, all those countries. I was kind of surprised when I got there because I thought maybe we'd have bikes. It's all on foot. It's just a walking mission, and your areas are huge. In Manaus itself, there's 11 stakes, so it's huge. It had huge growth in the last 20 years. Outside of it, there's a couple of districts. There's 2 stakes. No, there's one stake and a district that's almost a stake. There's the Porto Velho stake down south in the state of Rondônia. And then there's also the Rio Branco stake, the White River stake. And then the other areas that were close to being a district were Parintins and Maués, were 2 little cities. They each had a branch in it, but they had enough members frequenting that in Parintins they kind of split it up. They divided the city. They already had, it was one branch, but 3 separate meetings so that they could have everybody there. So they would have one meeting on this side of the river, and then one meeting over in this area, and then back over in this area, just so they could have everybody around. There were probably, I want to say, 500 active members in that branch. And there were well over that in the records. It was just so much work there that while I was there, when I got there, it was just one companionship who worked the entire city. And then the transfer afterwards, they sent a pair of sisters out to kind of help them out. And the membership just went back up because they were able to go out and find the members who'd kind of fallen through the cracks. Help them come back to church. In Boa Vista, up north by Venezuela, they're almost at a district. They had 5 wards and 2 branches up there, in just that one city. Outside of it, they only had one other city that had church presence in it, and it was relatively new. It had only been opened like a year before I got there. So they were just in the process of building up and everything. It was just a group at the time. I think they had 20 or 30 people coming. I never did get much east or west of Manaus. I spent most of my time to the east and south of Manaus. Actually, I served in, I think it was 9 or 10 areas. So I kind of got transferred around quite a bit, but I didn't spend a lot of time in a lot of those areas. So my first area was called Union in Manaus. That was when I was in the mission office with my companion. Then I went up to Boa Vista to an area called São Bento, or Saint Bento. I'm not sure what it means really. After that, I did go to Macaws, way out by Parintins, almost outside of the mission. We're like right on the edge of the mission. You couldn't go any further. You'd be in the Belém mission. I spent 6 months there, just straight. I got there, and my companion, he'd already been there 2 transfers, so he was kind of sure that he'd get transferred, and he didn't. He stuck around for me, taught me the area, and then he got transferred. So I got another companion. I spent 2 transfers with him. He got transferred. And then I got my other companion, the only American that I had. So it was kind of funny with the 2 Americans in the middle of the jungle. And then I got transferred after a while because we went to a zone conference, and one of the assistants just asked me, yeah, so how long have you been in Macaws? It's like, I've been there 4 transfers now. He's like, what? They'd totally forgotten I was there. I guess I just didn't stir the water much yet. Nobody really knew who I was, other than I just leave me out there and let me work. They forget about me. So after that, I went so like Parintins, Macaws is over here in the west corner of the mission. So I got on the plane for my transfer, came back to Manaus, and then I went to Rio Branco, Porto Velho, then Rio Branco, and then I got on a bus for 12 hours to get to my next area in a little town called Cruzeiro do Sul. Way out, we were almost on the border of Peru. I mean, there were areas where you could actually, like, you climb up on the hill, and out in the distance is Peru. You could literally see it. And we would joke around about that a lot in the zone, because our area, we had 12 missionaries in that city. We had 3 branches and 2 companionships per branch. And my area is just massive. It was just one little corner of the city and everything outside it that way. Walking from the corner this way, it was over an hour walk, and then going from this way to get to like a little settlement area that was out there, it was like almost 2 hours to walk to it, just to get there. We'd spend the day there, spend 2 hours walking back. And then after Cruzeiro, I went to a little place called Ji-Paraná, down in the south of Rondônia, right above Bolivia. I spent another 6 months down there. I loved it. It's one of the best cities that I passed in. The people, they were really open. A lot of them didn't necessarily accept what you were saying, so I never saw a baptism there or anything that was my investigator. It was just nice to get to know people and see a ward that is like, it was a mature ward. Up till now, all my experience had been in branches, mission branches, and they were like new. Macaws, it was 20 years old, but it was so isolated that you could really never get leadership in there to help them. We were 16 hours by boat from the nearest city. Cruzeiro was the same deal. We were 12 hours by bus. The only leadership we had were the 3 branch presidents and the zone leaders, and they were the only people who would go to Manaus every transfer. And they'd go for like 2 days and come back. And Paraná was kind of the same deal. It was a mature ward. It was actually already a ward when they made the Manaus Mission. So it was kind of fun. When I watched the video of the first caravan, it was kind of cool to see that area. Because I just gotten out of Paraná, I could just see the path that they made. They passed through Paraná. I got to see some of the old members the original members of the church. It's just nice meeting the pioneers. After that, I went back to Manaus, spent a transfer in a little area called Guarani, just kind of the slums, the ghetto. And it's really ghetto. It looked like Rio. What you think of Rio as. After that, I went to a little area close to, well, it was still in Manaus. It was closer to the temple, closer to the river and everything. So it was just a little bit more open. We were up on the top of the hill. You could kind of look out over everything. It was kind of nice to just see it. So overall, I just kind of served everywhere in the mission. I passed in 9 areas. It wasn't even close to the record. There was one of the assistants went to every area in the mission just because he was the traveling assistant. So the common religions down there, at least in the areas where I served, like on the outskirts in Manaus, it seemed like it was mostly Catholic, and Assembly is what they called themselves, is the Assembly and the Universal. Outside of it, there was the Assembly and the Universal were a lot more pronounced. They were a lot stronger. So they literally everybody would say, yeah, I'm from the Assembly of God. In Maués, there was a little more of the Catholicism. They had the big old cathedral. Well, big. It was kind of interesting. Just literally, you could have a church anywhere. Like, we would be walking, and there were streets that was like you would see 10 churches walking down the street. Just walking, you would see 10 of them. People going in and out. So they're very religious people. Sometimes though, they may not understand completely. They'll just say, yeah, it's this way. And then when you try to explain it to them, they just don't understand it. But when they do understand it, it clicks. They know it. It makes sense right away with what they've already known. Some of the pastors, I ran into a couple of them. Some of them, they would want to Bible bash and everything. And our president just told us, don't. You'll lose. It's not worth it. He's not going to listen. So do what you can. Just leave your testimony. Leave them with the Book of Mormon and leave. Go find somebody who will listen, who wants to know. The biggest challenges were actually definitely the last 3, getting people to church, because by definition they're kind of a lazy people. I like to joke around. It's like, yeah, it's Mormon Standard Time plus Brazilian Standard Time. when they say, yeah, I'm on my way, they're just literally walking out the door and they're 20 minutes late. So that was kind of an issue. We would leave our apartment. We'd have a meeting at like 9 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We would leave our apartment at 7 o'clock. Just start, come on, wake up. You gotta go. You said you'd be there. Let's go. So we would go after everybody. Sometimes they would come, sometimes they wouldn't. The other problems, there was a lot of the marriage issue. There was a lot of living together without being married, which in some areas it wasn't so much of a problem. They were open to being married, and it was very easy to do it. It would just take like 2 weeks. You could get their papers. You could bring them into the office, get them all signed. Then you'd bring them in. They'd perform the civil ceremony, and you're set. They can be baptized. And most of the time they wanted it. They wanted it that way. The other thing, in 2 of the cities that I served in, there was a lot of alcohol, especially in Maués. But I guess it kind of was the festive time. I was there during Carnival, and I was there during the World Cup. So it was just alcohol all over the place. Especially after Brazil lost to Germany 7-1. Literally, they shut off the TV after Germany was at 4-0, and they were just on the road getting drunk. So I was like, it's not going to be worth working today. You're just going to be talking to drunks. So we went back to our apartment and started just studying for the next day. Other than that, it was pretty easy. It was relatively easy work, and people are very open to it. So one of the funnier rumors, well, for me, it was just really funny because it was just totally wacko. I was in Paraná at the time, and we were attracted into this guy. We actually talked to his girlfriend before. We hadn't been able to talk to him because we gotten a referral to a less active member who lived in that house. So we're like, oh, sweet. She's the only member in her family. Let's go. Let's go visit. Let's go say hi, at least. Maybe we can get her reactivated and everything. So we went down there, and she'd already moved on. But we ran into this girl. I forget her name now. I think it was like Angelica or something. So we talked to her, and we're like, yeah, could we come by another day and share a message with you? So she said, yeah, when my boyfriend's here. And it's like, great, 2 people. We'll definitely be back. We came back, we talked with him, and then after the lesson, we were just kind of chatting, and we were just like, yeah, so what actually have you heard about the church before? And he said that, yeah, he'd seen the missionaries walking around a lot, but the rumor was that it was a church for the gay people. So I was like, what? Like, yeah, we always see just the 2 guys walking around. Like, well, I can understand where you're seeing that from, but that's not how it is. So we spent like an hour explaining it to him, and then I don't know if he really believed us, because we never saw him again. And just a bunch of little crazy stuff. People would ask us like just these random questions, like, so what do you believe that God appeared to a 14-year-old kid? Like, yes. Really? They didn't know what to think. And then they would show like videos of their pastors doing miracles, and they would ask us what we think. It's like, well, I think, to be honest, most of it's trickery. Maybe some of it's real, I can't say. But just the feeling that I have is not is not right. It's not what you think it is. And they just, I don't know, they just would not like to talk to us after that. The most common Brazilian foods was the beans and the rice, and then there's always some kind of a meat, but it depends on what the meat is. In Paraná, it was mostly beef. In Manaus, it was fish. Yeah, they're right on the river. Literally everybody was a fisherman. You could pull in a fish about that big, and you could buy one for about 7 reais. And that's about a 4-kilo fish, about 8 to 10 pounds of fish. So they really made good fish. It was really, really good stuff. Tambaqui is one of the more common fish that they eat. It's that big one. I've heard stories of 50 or 60 pound ones. So you're talking a fish about that big. Also, it's really nice about that fish is it doesn't have spines or anything. It doesn't have the little tiny bones that we have here in the trout. That one at least has ribs. So it's like you just slide the rib out of the meat, and you've got a chunk of meat. It looks like chicken. It's about the size of a chicken breast, but it is really good. It's a really juicy meat. So fish, one of the other kind of a weird one that I had was the cow intestine up north by Venezuela. They just kind of made it into a soup with the macaroni, and you really couldn't tell the difference between the noodle and the intestine other than the taste. So it's just like, it's kind of a weird thought, but you get used to it. There are a couple places that I would eat liver, which at first I didn't like it that much. It kind of has a weird aftertaste, but there's other places where they make it really good. And in Cruzeiro do Sul, it was a lot of chicken. In Manaus and Cruzeiro, it was a lot of chicken and pasta. But then you'd also run across other stuff. Vatapá is something that they have from Bahia down towards the south of Brazil. It's kind of a bread type pudding. I didn't care for it too much because they like to put pepper on it and the spices, which I was not too much of a fan. But when they put it in front of you, you just eat it. And after a while, you don't even notice it anymore. It just gets really good. But one of my favorites was something they called Feijoada. It's basically, it's a black bean stew. They will literally, it's like they throw the whole pig into this stew. They'll put pig ears, pig intestine, pig meat, everything in there. They'll throw in the beans. They make this really, really good sauce that goes with the beans. And then they also throw like a hot dog, bratwurst, everything into this stew. And then when you get that out, you put that on a big old serving of rice. Just throw it on top, mix it all together, eat that with banana and farinha, which is like a cornstarch thing. You just kind of cut your banana up, get a chunk of banana, the rice, the feijoada. It is so good. It's kind of a bland taste. It is so good though. They're very versatile. They will make a dessert out of literally everything. I'd never tried sweetened like avocado as a dessert. I didn't know you could. I always ate it as guacamole. But they would put it in and make like a cream, a mousse out of it. And it was actually, it was really good. There's a lot of fruits that you could be walking down the road and you can pull a fruit off of the tree and eat it. There's a lot of that, especially caju, mangoes. There's one that they call carambola, star fruit. It's just good stuff. They kind of advise you to stay away from it, but it's impossible to. You just got to pick who you got to buy it from. There's those people that's like, they don't keep it very clean or anything. You can see the dead cockroaches on the floor right there. It's just kind of a nasty place. And then there's the areas where like they're obviously trying to keep it clean. And they're usually pretty good about keeping it clean. So I mean, I never had too much problem buying from the street vendors. I would usually buy the picolé, that little ice cream thing, or I would buy, they would do the same thing with homemade ice cream bars on the popsicle sticks. So I would buy that stuff. I would buy, they call it pão de queijos, cheese bread rolls, about that big. You can buy like 4 of them for $1. And they're pretty good. They drink a lot of soda and a lot of juice down there. Not so much milk, but a lot of soda and a lot of juice. There was a lot of that. The insects, especially mosquitoes, are a pain. They were like, when I got sick, it was just up on top of the hill and the wind just kind of blew around, so all the mosquitoes would blow right up to us. That apartment probably had more than 10,000 mosquitoes living in it. And they ranged from anywhere like a really tiny one to big ones, big mosquitoes. I saw a couple of bugs they were huge, just massive bugs. Those moths that are that big. The biggest cockroach I saw was about that long. It was just a massive bug. There was an apartment that I lived in that we had bats in the roof. And we had to wash our clothes outside, so you may come outside and you got bat poop on your clothes, so you gotta wash them again. About the craziest that I got was in my second to last area. I was a district leader at the time, so I was doing interviews for the zone leaders. And we came walking, they told us about this one place where you could walk down and you could see the crocodiles in the river, or in the creek. So we're like, I want to go see them. So we went walking down there, and yeah, we saw like 8 of them. 8 of them just sitting in the creek in the middle of the city. They weren't huge, probably about 4 feet long, if that. Probably closer to 2.5 or 3. But there were 8 of them sitting in the middle of the city. And then I heard stories. I never got out to what they call the Zona Leste, the west side of the city, where it was a lot more rural and everything. It was a lot more like the interior, where you would see the crocodiles just crossing the road. And I met an elder that he got a video of one that was just, it crossed the road in front of him. I don't know if anybody saw jaguars or anything other than at the zoo. Probably. Monkeys, definitely. You run into a lot of those. In Macaws, I never was able to get a picture with one, but in Macaws I saw 3 different ones in particular. Kind of a funny story, one that we were going to take a picture with. It was kind of funny when we got there to take the picture, we found out the monkey had raided their kitchen. So he was up in the tree and he had a butcher knife. It's like, yeah, okay. I think I might just leave that monkey alone. Because he was mad at the time when he has a knife. And Probably doesn't know how to use it, but he's still going to take a swing at you. So, other than that, it was just, you could be walking down the road and you might see a snake or something in the road. Maybe there were a lot of the macaws and everything. I saw a couple of them, and everybody had what they called a papagayo. It's a parakeet, one of the parakeet type things. Just those green parrots, they could train them to talk and everything. Literally everybody had one. So it was really cool to come into a house, see one of those, talk to it. And I just thought it was really funny because some of them would swear at you like crazy. I don't know so much about the myths because a lot of them, especially in Manaus, right near the river, they had the big crocodiles and the big snakes. So they would tell you stories. They're not cool stories. It's like the movie Anaconda, literally. We would hear stories about kids getting eaten by the snakes. I didn't run across too many like Indians per se. I ran across a couple of descendants. The closest I got to that was actually in Cruzeiro do Sul, and it wasn't in my area. It was the other companionship that lived in my apartment before we all got sick. That they were teaching a member of it was called the Kushina Hua Tribe. It's one of the bigger tribes down towards that area of Brazil, but it was just really cool because to learn about their history. I never learned too much because I didn't talk to him as much, but I think the coolest thing for me was, you know, that photo of Jesus Christ visiting the Americas that they have in the Book of Mormon? There's a guy in that photo. He's one of the guys in the front that Balmar, this guy in Cruzeiro, he said that he met somebody, one of the members of his tribes, who dressed exactly like that guy. That guy is his tribe. It was really cool just to see how the Lamanites are still here. They're accepting it. Because it did not take him long at all. He was already married, nothing wrong, no problems with a word of wisdom. They started teaching him, and 2 weeks later he was baptized. He wanted to know. He was a very simple person. About 85 years old, I want to say. But he was very simple and he was very dedicated. He made the decision that he wanted to go to church. And although while the other elders were teaching him, he actually lived in our branch. So he got started going to the other branch, and then our branch president said, yeah, well, he needs to come here too, just so that we can kind of help keep an eye on him, just kind of double up, because he's old, lives by himself with his wife. But he would come to church every day, every Sunday. He would be one of the first people there. 85 years old, got his little walking stick. He's got all the armbands that they have. Occasionally his wife would come painted as an Indian. It was really cool stuff. And he would come from the morning meetings for their branch, and then he would come in the afternoon for ours. He would always be there. He never missed a day. He was just always very happy. So it was really nice meeting him. One of the sad things that happened to him is after he'd been baptized for about a month and a half, his son got killed. Nobody knows by whom. All they know is that he just disappeared. He'd been out fishing, so the assumption is that he just got killed, and they tied him to the motor and threw him in the river. Nobody knows what happened other than that. But I mean, he was sad about that. And he, like I said, he didn't understand everything. He didn't understand much about the plan of salvation, but we told him, yeah, you'll see your son again. And he lightened up. It was instantaneous. He just did a complete turnaround. He was devastated, and he trusted us so much. It was just incredible to see the faith that he had. And that he's probably a direct descendant of one of those men who saw Christ. It was amazing. Well, dangerous animals, in the areas that I served, I didn't run into a lot of it, so I don't have much about that. Other than just, if it's a dog, face it down. Usually they'll run away. If it's a pit bull, climb a tree. Because they had some big pit bulls down there. And you don't want to mess with those guys. As for crime, I never got assaulted or anything, but I met plenty of missionaries who were. And they would just tell me, just carry the books. That's all you need. Don't carry your camera with you. Because that's all they're after. They just want the money. They want it now. So carry 5 or 10 reais with you at all times, so that you have something that you can give them. If you have a nice watch, they may come after that. My watches were just pieces of crap. Half the time I didn't use one. And then just basically in general, after about, I want to say 6:30-ish, you want to kind of steer clear of the areas, just like the ghetto. The little alleyways, you kind of want to steer clear of those. I mean, if I had a lot of my investigators that lived in those areas, so I would go into them regular. So the people knew who I was, basically. They wouldn't mess with me or anything. After about 9:30, there's nothing really to work. There's no work out, and it's kind of getting a little more dangerous. The assaults usually happen about that time. Actually, my last area, about halfway through the transfer, the police and the drug lords were having a drug war down there. So the police would just say, yeah, be back in your apartment by 9 o'clock. Anybody who's out, you run the risk of getting shot. So it's just, okay, just pay attention to Spirit. He'll tell you more than anything else what to do, where to go. If you're ever confronted, just go with it. Sometimes you may be able to talk to the guy. I heard some stories about like the people, they would be assaulted. They would lose what they had, the 10 or 15 reais, their watch, maybe the camera and the cell phone that the mission gave them. But then the guy would also grab one of their bags. All they've got in their bag is the Book of Mormon. And maybe he would go back and he'd just be curious. He'd start reading it. And I heard a couple of stories that these guys, they would come back and they would return the stuff they'd stolen. And then they would want to be baptized. So it was basically, it's just follow what the Spirit says. He'll guide you on what you need to do. Just don't put yourself into situations where he has to leave you. I mean, most of the time you won't spend it out where the wild ones live. All of the areas are in a city. Maybe it's a small city, but they're all in a city. You kind of have to go outside to see the wildlife. You might run across the crocodiles in the city, but they're just going to be 2 feet long, 3 feet long at the maximum. So, I mean, they're good sized, but they can't really get you. The snakes in the city aren't that big. There may be 6 or 8 feet long. So it'll be about a 50-pound snake, but it's not big enough to kill you. Especially because literally when you're a missionary, you're never alone. You got the Spirit with you, you got your companion, and everybody in the road would help out. There's very few areas where it would actually happen, like an animal attack, unless it was just a dog. And then literally they would be after the dog, and whatever happens, happens. Other than that, there's just not much. Just kind of mind your business and they won't bother you too much. I never was bothered by animals. At least in Manaus, the first rule of thumb is never drink water from the tap. I think the other guy from the video mentioned that, never drink water from the tap. That'll nail you every time. You'll have diarrhea for 3 days, and it's not fun. Outside of it, there's a couple of cities. Paraná, I drank water from the tap all the time because we could. It was filtered. It was pretty clean. And then just health and sickness. Most of the diseases that I ran across were they were mosquito carried. So a mosquito repellent is good, but at the same time, it won't deter all of them unless you get one of the really, really strong ones. And then it's also a people deterrent. It really stinks. So in our apartments, we would always have a fan, and we would just always keep that blowing on us because it would keep the mosquitoes away more than anything else. So we might be sleeping, we just turn the fan on, have it blowing on us all night. It would keep 90% of the mosquitoes away. Also, it's kind of a seasonal thing. When I got dengue, it was just the seasonal thing. It was the second year that dengue had been in the city, and funny story, it was actually a missionary who brought it there. He got sick with dengue in Manaus, didn't know what it was, got transferred there, got sick. Everybody, mosquitoes were biting him, transferred it, and everybody got it. Just kind of be smart about it. If you can, stay in areas that are relatively mosquito free, but you're never going to be in one that is entirely. So just keep a bug spray with you, or just be ready to swat. And you'll have to swat a lot. The dengue definitely is not fun. It's one of those tropical diseases, like the stereotype. Basically, it just makes you hurt a lot, and you have a high fever. Like your joints hurt, your muscles, your bones, everything hurts. You just don't feel like moving because it hurts too much. The fever gets up to about 101 degrees, somewhere in there. Sometimes it gets higher. So it's a pretty high fever. And for me, it just knocked me down for 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks flat. I couldn't get out of bed. Also, you lose your appetite really, really fast. You don't feel like eating anything, drinking anything. I think for those 2 weeks, about the only thing I ate and drank, I drank water. That was about it. Or coconut milk was one of the better things to drink. And then just crackers. That was about the only thing I could eat. I ate like 2 sleeves of crackers that big in about 2 weeks. So I lost a lot of weight when I got sick. And I wasn't the only one who got sick in that apartment. While I was there were 4 of us in the apartment. I was just the first one to go down. So I went down, I got better, I was still kind of weak, and then one of the other guys got sick. He was down for 2 weeks. He got better, he was still kind of weak, so at this time we were kind of splitting up the duties. Because we'd have one guy stay in the apartment with the sick dude, and the other 2 would go out and try to cover both areas. It was just hard to keep track of 2 areas, because my area, we were working a lot with some of the members to keep after our investigators, and it was the same thing in the other area. I think for that time, we were trying to cover over 30 active investigators. It was just really, it was really hard to keep track of everybody. So it was just kind of a cycle thing. After I left, I got better. Other than that, I never really got sick. You do have to watch out for dehydration though. It's really muggy, so you wouldn't think you'd dehydrate fast, but you really do. You sweat like a pig. Our mission president's wife told us drink at least 3 or 4 liters of water a day. If you're not drinking that much, it's not enough. You need to drink that every day. It's kind of hard for them to get through the clothing in general. They only really come out early in the morning, about 4 to 6 or 7-ish, and then from about 6 until 9 at night. During the late night, they're not out, and in the day, it's just they hide. I don't know where, but they hide. They just disappear. As for clothing, they tend to go more after like the arms, because it's just an easier target. They would go after like anything outside of the collar and the sleeves. They would go after it. Sometimes they go after your knees and everything because the clothing kind of fits a little tighter there. So you just kind of gotta keep a little alert. But after a while, I didn't care anymore. I didn't even notice when they would bite. I was like, oh, hi. So you kind of adapt to life. Brazilians, they're just so adapted to it. I don't know how they did it, but it's like the mosquitoes don't even bother with them anymore. They only go after the new Americans. I never did. One of my zone leaders did, but it was kind of one of those transition things. I was in Paraná. It was just me and my companion and the zone leaders that were in the city, but we lived in different apartments on opposite sides of the city. So, and it was a 5-week transfer. It was a shorter one. So I was just there. I was working in my area, and then he got sick. But it was during that time that they went back to Manaus. So they went back to Manaus like the end of the first week of the transfer. Just took off. They came back 4 days later. They kind of gave us the overview, and then they took off to go down to Vilhena, which is the other district in the zone. And like literally during the next 3 weeks, up until like the last week of the transfer, I really didn't see them. So I don't know much about the parasites. I just know they aren't fun. I kind of lived a little bit of everything, so I just kind of have to do a general overview. In Manaus particular, I was kind of surprised. I went there, I was kind of expecting the jungle hut type deal. It's a very, very industrialized city. I was really surprised. I found out later that it's actually like the 5th largest city in Brazil. I was like, what? It's sitting out in the middle of nowhere. There's no roads to nowhere. The only way you can get in and out is by plane or by boat. And it's the 5th biggest city in Brazil. It's very industrialized. It produces, I think, 70% of the electronics that they use in Brazil. A lot of the cars too. So there, the standard of living was actually, it was higher. It wasn't quite at our level. I would say, not to be mean or anything, it's a lot like Mexican quarters in the cities that we have around here. It's a pretty basic lifestyle. Depending on the apartment, you might have some apartments that are really, really nice. They're going to be really expensive. And then there's apartments that it's just like, it's a 2 or a 3-story building. Every floor is an apartment. You're paying like 200 reais a month, like 75 bucks, if that, a month for rent. Also for work, they literally will do just about anything. Outside of Manaus, I would see, we called them hippies. They would be the people, the artisans. They would go out into the jungle for months at a time, and they would come back and they'd have all these trinkets, the wire work, the bead work that they've learned how to do. And some of it was really cool stuff. At one time I did have a necklace with a jaguar claw on it, but I lost it. I was kind of sad about that. But literally, we could talk to them, and they would do just about anything. They could build anything. A lot of the people, they see a need, or they'll see something that they want to do, and they'll go out and do it. Met a lot of kids, young kids. They would be out and they're selling ice cream on the road, homemade ice cream. They called it picolé. It's basically just like frozen yogurt in a little plastic sack about that long, about that wide. They'd sell it for like 25 cents. They just have a little styrofoam cooler full of it. Be walking around, picolé, picolé. Just selling this. By the bus stations, the bus terminals, there would be a lot of that. Everybody would go there, it looked like. Everybody they were just working, they needed to work. So they would buy stuff at a store. They would buy like water and ice, and they would keep it cool, and they would just walk around selling it on the bus terminals. And they made a lot of money with it, actually. They made quite a bit because the people would buy it. It's just so hot there. Last year, the record, I don't know how high it got in Fahrenheit degrees. I can just tell you it got to 50 degrees Celsius. So it was really, really hot. President Castro, who was after President Klein while I was there, actually told the missionaries, do not go outside. It's too hot to work. So the missionary work in Manaus was stopped for a week because they just could not go outside. It was probably 100 degrees inside the houses, 130 outside. It was really hot. One of the first things that I did for the Christmas conference when I got there, we went to the Army Zoo. And it's like their jungle specialists have a zoo that they have all the animals, and they'll learn about them because that's what they do. They go out in the jungle. They're after the poachers, all the criminals and everything who go hide out. So they have to know how to live out there. And they are really cool soldiers. Outside of Manaus, there was a lot of fun stuff. There was one area up in Boa Vista that we were helping one of the sisters clean up her yard, doing a little service project, and we found this toad. It was that big. This thing was massive, probably weighed 5 pounds. So we just put that in a sack. And my companion had a flashlight that he bought that had a taser on it, so he kept shocking this toad until it ended up dying. And then actually 2 days later, when we were walking back to our apartment, it was like another one of those hour walks to get back. We found there was this guy, he'd ridden by us on his bike, and he just stopped and he was holding something down with his tire. And we're like, what is going on here? So we walk up there and he's got a snake pinned down. It was about that long, just pinned down. So he got it and he wanted to put it in his aquarium. So we found a water bottle on the side of the road. He put the snake in the water bottle and took off. And then I was talking to my companion. He said, yeah, that snake probably wasn't alone because that was a baby. They call it a sukuri. That's the anaconda. So we saw an anaconda that big, and then while I had my flashlight out, I was just kind of looking around. I could see, it was like, I want to say like 40 yards out, I could see like the little red eyes. I don't know if it was a mom or if it was something else, but it was like, that was a little sketchy because that area, it was a dip and it was just like a little stream and just completely overgrown, yellow, dirty water. There could be anything hiding in there and you wouldn't know it. In Macaws, it was just out in the middle of nowhere. It was kind of fun. We went fishing a couple times off the dock. I can't say I got a big fish, which was kind of a bummer because I saw some of the really big ones down there. Actually, they eat a lot of them. It's really good stuff. But the biggest fish I caught was about 2 inches long. It was kind of ridiculous. But we heard about areas there that you could go out, you could see the crocodiles in the water. One of the areas, actually, one of the members he has a chicken farm. Like 12,000 chickens, everything out in the middle of the jungle. So he'd have to be out there every once in a while just making sure that the jaguars aren't taking his chickens. So he said that he's seen jaguar there a couple of times. He's seen black ones, the normal spotted, everything. Cruzeiro do Sul, we saw the river dolphins, everything there. Ji-Paraná, it was a little bit more like what you would think of like Midwestern United States. It was one of the richer cities in the mission, and it was just there were a lot of, they call themselves the Gaúcho, the cowboys, the hillbilly type of people. They would have a horse, they'd ride the horse down the road, everything. It was kind of a neat place to be. So one of the new things that they've said is that in Brazil, all of the Brazil missions, you don't need suit coats anymore. So you don't need to buy one. If you're looking at it, you don't need to. You won't ever use it. I can guarantee you. I brought mine. I think I used it when I got there and when I left, and that was it. I never used it a day in my mission. It spent 2 years in the closet. Other than that, you're kind of limited when you're going down there on weight for travel. It's 70 pounds. It's 23 or 24 kilos that you're allowed, and that's it on the international flight. But inside, originally it was that way inside the mission too for the transfers, because we do a lot of the transfers by plane. But then one of the members is actually the CEO of an airline that the mission uses a lot. So he gave the missionaries a weight limit of 60 kilos, which is about 130, 140 pounds. So you're not going to bring a lot of stuff with you when you go down, but you can have your parents send some stuff down there and have it waiting for you when you get there. You don't want to go overboard with it. There were a couple of missionaries that they went overboard with it and they had to leave stuff behind, which is really sad, because that weight limit is actually really there. Because when you go to an area that is really isolated, you're going and you're bringing 3 boxes of the Book of Mormon with you. You're bringing 100 books with you, along with your luggage, and that'll be on your name. So there is some stuff that you can kind of get by with it. There's a couple of the airports, it's like they'll let you buy with up to 5 kilos extra overweight, and they won't charge you with it for just Azul. The other lines, they'll charge you for it, and sometimes it can get expensive. But generally, just short sleeve shirts. You won't really use long sleeve shirts. Maybe down in the south you might, because I heard that it gets cold there, but I was never there. I went down there for 6 months. I never ran into the cold. So you're gonna use short sleeve shirts, and that's about it. Get an umbrella because it rains a lot. It really does. My first rainstorm there, it was 10 minutes of rain, but you had 4 inches of water in the road when it stopped. It was nuts. And that wasn't even the worst one that I ran into. In Cruzeiro do Sul, we had a rainstorm. It was all day, and it just poured the whole day. So about 9 o'clock at night, there was kind of a flash flood down in the city center, and we were down there at the time. It wasn't a huge deal, but the water, it was like mid-calf deep, and it was still pouring, and we had to get somewhere because we had the cell phone, and some of we had another companionship. They were looking at getting a different apartment because they were getting way overcharged and everything. So we had the cell phone, and the financial secretary was going to be calling, so we're like, we just got to go, we got to run. So we took off running in this rainstorm, and it was just shoes filled up. You're completely soaking wet. You couldn't get any wetter if you jumped in a pool. It's just, everything is soaking wet. And my shoes didn't dry out for anything 3 days. Be smart about it. You don't need all that you think you will. Don't bring a lot of like the hygiene stuff. Like a toothbrush and toothpaste, everything, bring it. You can get shampoo down there. It's cheap. It's really cheap. So you can get a lot of the stuff that you need down there. That intestine spaghetti. It was different, but it was actually pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. It was actually really good. There's a lot of times during the rainy season it'll just rain like crazy, and it won't stop for a month and a half. It won't be raining 24 hours a day, but you're going to get 3 or 4 showers a day. So just be ready to get wet. That's just part of life down there. You get wet, or you're inside, you're teaching somebody in their apartment. You just stick around until the rain stops and head out again. Just keep an eye out for the rain. Crazy, I had a couple. Dangerous, I never really had. The most dangerous that I had was in my last area when they had that drug war going on. This most sketchy that it got for me was we were out a little after 9 because we were just coming back to our apartment, and there were 12 cop cars that passed us with their lights flashing. It's like, oh snap, we gotta get back. Because they weren't going slow, they were running somewhere. So there was something going on. So we just booked it back to our apartment. Crazy stuff. You may want to watch out for the girls sometimes, because some of them are they're just after the guys, after the missionaries. That's all they want. They want to come back to the States. They just want to get out of Brazil. Other than that, not too much. It's actually pretty similar to the States. It's just the culture's a lot more open. They'll talk to you a lot more. My dad had warned me about a trick that a lot of missionaries try to do with junior companions who are learning language. They'll try to, like, for my dad, when he served in Argentina, they would try to get the missionaries to say, "Estoy grávida." She's like, "I'm pregnant." And the missionaries would joke around, like, "Yeah, it means you're satisfied, you're good." So they would try to get the younger companions to say that after lunch. So the members would just kind of get a kick out of it. Other than that, it's just kind of funny. A lot of the times, I would make a pretty common mistake saying the word the prophet. It's profeta in Portuguese. Male and female. It's a feminine word, but it's for a masculine person, so it threw me off a lot. So a lot of the times I would say a profeta, which is the prophetess, translated. So it's like I would call Joseph Smith the prophetess sometimes. But it's just a mistake that it just takes practice to get over. I learned how to get around on the Brazilian buses. If you ever wanted to play the game Sardines, you can't get any more extreme than a Brazilian bus. They have the signs in there and it says like 70 people sitting, 30 people standing. Not on a Brazilian bus. You're talking 140 sitting and probably 150 standing in the bus. At least the double or triple buses, because they've got the accordion ones. But it's literally like they're crazy about the buses. When the bus gets there, everybody wants to get on at once. So you got to be quick about it, because I heard stories about missionaries who would accidentally leave a companion behind because they'd get on the bus and their companion wasn't assertive enough and wouldn't get on. So they'd go down to the next stop and they'd have to walk back to get to him. So just getting around on a Brazilian bus, I learned how to cook a couple of things that I never knew how. A couple of the Brazilian foods, not much, just basically the rice type stuff, but it's good food. Definitely that the Spirit is there. He talks to you, and when He testifies, it is so strong. The experience that comes to mind was actually, it was one of my recent converts. When I got to the area in Macaws, he'd been going to church already for about 4 months. Neither I nor my companion knew that he wasn't a member. He was always there. He was always helping. We didn't know he was a member until his girlfriend said, "Yeah, when are you going to baptize him?" It was like, he needs to be? It was like, what? Let's do it now. He's ready. He's been going to church for 4 months. He's way past the expiration date. He's ready. So we were there, and like we just had to go through the lessons with him, so we went through them really fast. But when we made the invitation for him to be baptized, we'd planned it all out. My companion was going to ask him, and then when it came to the moment, neither of us could talk. The Spirit had gotten so strong during that lesson that he was crying. He could not talk. It was so strong. I was literally crying. I almost couldn't talk. It's just like, Thiago, James, you know this is true. You know you need to do this. And he was crying too. It was just so strong. His grandparents said no for a little while, and the testimony builder came. He told us later. He said, "I'm almost 18. Give me 2 months. I will sign my own papers. I want to be baptized." He knows the church is true. There's not a shadow of doubt in his mind. He was actually the last baptism that I got to see in that area. And then I found out later on he's teaching a seminary there. He's the ward executive secretary. He helps out in the bishopric and everything. Now that he has the Melchizedek priesthood, he's been doing a lot of work. He's getting ready to serve his mission now, which I am so excited for him. He's going to be an incredible missionary. It was actually the first baptism of one of my investigators, which is like the big deal. Kind of the same deal. She'd already been to church a couple of times, and she'd already spoken with the missionaries like 3 years ago, but for some reason she said it just was not right for her. And then 2 days after I got there to that area, we had lunch with the second counselor in the branch presidency, and he had his sister there, who's her friend. His sister's less active. We were trying with her the whole time to get her reactivated. For me, it never happened. But we ran into Adrienne there at lunch. She came to lunch because his sister had invited her. So she was just there, and we're just kind of talking. And then we just kind of got on the subject. She asked us just what's a basic overview of the church history. So we just kind of started talking, explaining it, and then she would start asking about the doctrine and everything. We spent probably 3 hours. We were there from about noon until 4, just teaching. She wanted to know so badly. We just spent like 3 hours teaching her, and then we're just like, yeah, when can we come by to your house? When can we come back? And she said, you can come back at 9 o'clock tonight. So she just told us, I just want to know. So we ended up going back that night. We went out and worked for like 2 hours, 3 hours, and then we came back to her place. And it was the same deal. It was teaching. We ended up teaching at her that day. I think we taught her like 7 hours straight. She just wanted to know so much. And she said it was just making so much sense to her. Nothing that she'd heard before made as much sense. So it was Thursday when we started teaching her. It's like the rules for being eligible to be baptized that she had to go to church at least 3 times. So we just asked her, have you been to the church already? And she's like, yeah. There was a time that I went and I was there. I went every week for like a month and a half. It's like, okay, we can do it this week. We could baptize her this week if she wanted it. So we kind of helped her and we talked about it for a little while, and then Friday we just asked her, what do you think? What do you think about getting baptized? And she said, yeah, I want to do it. It sounds like it just feels right. So we went ahead. We got her scheduled for her interview Friday night. We'd gone by Friday morning, talked to her. We got it scheduled for Friday night. We went and did the interview Friday night, and she got baptized on Saturday. So literally, from Thursday to Saturday, it was incredible to see how fast the Spirit can work. There's times that it's different for every person. There's times it's slower, but it was incredible to see how fast He can work when the people are ready. It was 2 days, 48 hours, and she was baptized. Wow. From first lesson to baptism in 2 days. It was incredible. I can just tell you, you'll fall in love with Brazil. You will fall in love with the people of Manaus and that mission. It is incredible. They're so open. They're so ready to hear it. And the members will do anything to help you. They really will. Other than that, just work like crazy. Because you will want to. You will need to. So if you just open your call now, you're going to the best mission in the world. I can tell you that, hands down, it is the best mission in the world. I was kind of a wild card. Not so much the wild card. I was a little bit of a rebel in high school and everything. But during my 2 years down there, you see so much. You feel the Spirit so strong. You just grow so fast. It will change your life. You will definitely fall in love with Brazil. You will fall in love with the country. You will fall in love with the people. I guarantee it. By the time it was winding down for my mission, it was like the members, they would kind of tease me that, yeah, you're going home soon. It's like, shut up. I do not want to leave. I want to stay here. I did not ever want to leave Manaus. I still don't. I still want to go back. Some of my best friends are there. My best friends, the best people I've met are there. I can guarantee it, you will love Manaus. And you will love your experience. So, just have fun.